Daniel is here, mulching. He's about to help us put trellises up. You ready, Daniel?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
We use straw mulch, and then we also are kind of experimenting this year with this, some people call it weed paper. It's kind of actually a plastic. I'll show you. This, we've just done it in the ground here, and I've put it in a couple of my 4-feet beds. The only thing that I don't like about this is that it's a little harder to plant from seed, but it is nice for just cutting a hole and putting the plants in the ground. Here where we've planted from seed, we had to make a pretty large hole to create the mound. Mulching is a really important part of organic gardening because you're not relying on any sort of you know, chemical weed killer, and so this is how you really help keep the weeds down so that it, you know, that your plants get a chance to grow and they're not having to compete for nutrients with weeds. What'd you find, silly boy?
Daddy backed me up.
Daddy locked you up?
He locked me up.
I'm gonna free the garden prisoner. Now we are going to start putting up our trellises for our tomatoes. Last year we used cattle panels, which I guess are 16 feet, and we lined them out and held them up with T-post, and we had them down on the ground just like this one right here. Well, they're in raised beds, but you know, they touch the soil, and so it provided 4 feet of support. When we planted tomatoes on them, way too close together. We've planted our tomatoes about 24 inches apart now instead of the 12 inches that we did last year. I had read about square foot gardening methods, but I completely disagree that that is a functional way to plant them. Some people may do that, but with the humidity here in Arkansas, it really, we ended up with a lot of disease because there just wasn't airflow. So this year we did 22 to 24 inches apart, and I'll be heavily pruning. But we're gonna do our trellises a little bit differently. Instead of having them go all the way down to the soil, we're actually going to lift them up on these T-posts and secure them a couple feet away from the soil so that we can have support up to about 6 feet high rather than only having 4 feet. Here, here's one that we did, and it's about 12 inches up. And down here, these are just little pieces of trellis, little pieces of cattle panel. Here's another that we put, this one's probably about 14 inches up off the ground. And we have these 2 long beds that we're gonna do this with, and then there is a bed over here where I showed you earlier where we had the cherry tomatoes. And we also just experimented with this. This is a piece of 7-foot fencing, which we've got tall T-posts. We're going to replace those T-posts in the middle. We use some shorter ones, but it's really, I think it's going to be saggy on top. This is not nearly as strong as cattle panels, but we're just experimenting with that because that's some material we had laying around. So we drive these T-posts in the ground and into the raised bed. These cattle panels right here that we're about to put up are not full cattle panels. They're 10-foot pieces that we pulled off another project. And since this wasn't the full 48-foot bed, we decided this would be a good place to utilize these smaller pieces.
Good job, big boy.
We have gathered cattle panels from a lot of different sources, but you know, we just had to go buy some new ones to finish this project. We shopped around and there was a, you know, a farm and garden store in town where they were $19, which is pretty significantly cheaper than some places. Some places, you know, they were running 25 or 26. We've gotten a handful of them, you know, salvaging them off of other projects. We've been given some of them from people. We've gotten some as like scratch and dents, where we ask places, hey, if you ever have any bent panels, let me know. And we've gotten them for $5 to $10 that way, but that's pretty rare. We are using zip ties to fasten these panels to not only the T-post but to each other, so that they can be good and sturdy. We use a lot of zip ties, so we got this bag for $20 at Home Depot, 1,000 of them. Since we've left the space underneath the trellis, between the trellis and the soil, some of the plants need some securing, but they're not quite tall enough to make it to the trellis yet. So I'm just using these stakes to lean them up to, and then once they're just a little bit bigger, we'll be able to fasten them to the trellis. Okay, we're about to get to work on the 2 long rows of trellises. They'll be just like the one that I just showed you. I will be posting a video next week that is a garden tour of everything once it's planted and in, so you'll get to see the finished product of those trellises then. Y'all have a good one. Until next time.